Okay, according to my Google machine, this tells me that we are live. Steve, thanks for being here today as a part of one of a series of mini interviews, not just in the era of COVID, but it really is a time of innovation. And it dawned on me, this is how I got to now when I was in the Army. Everything I learned about being an Army officer, I learned from the lieutenants and the lieutenant mafia, the platoon sergeants, the first sergeants. I just went and asked people who had already been there, done that. How'd you do it? And then when I was creating my company, Ride Scout, years ago, when you and I first met, I did and repeated the same steps. Went out and found every smart person I could find. Most of the time, I met them for a beer, which is why I say I built Ride Scout one beer at a time. Then when it came to the era of COVID and this rapid innovation we're going through, the reality of it is no one's really been through this kind of scenario, not at least in 100 years. So I was on the phone talking to everybody, and then I realized, why am I not sharing these? This is the very nature of who I am as a coach, teach, mentor, team builder. So I figured out how to create this little video series. And Steve, thanks for being here. I'm going to introduce you in a second, but I want to remind all of our listeners, the whole focus should be, of course, on those three tiers. The first tier are the sick and the healthcare givers that are right there on the front lines. That second tier are those people who have now found themselves immediately out of work and what we can do to get them involved. And then the third tier, where I think my skill set works the best in terms of my time and talents, is on those businesses, small businesses, people who are really struggling to find answers on how to get to the other side, innovate their way through this, the entrepreneurs, the startups. And so these interviews, and your interview number 34 or 35, I'm not sure where I am, are special because you, by your very nature, is someone that is very prepared to help folks through this. So for folks that don't know Steve Guengerich, or as he likes to be preferred or easy to call him, Steve G. I've known you for several years in between the different hats that you wear here in Austin back in the day, up in Dallas now. And speaking of hats, you are now at the University of Texas, Dallas, and you commented very early on in my interviews that I was not wearing the appropriate gear.
That's
and,
right.
Here I am. I'm going to spend a minute or two in this hat because I think it mirrors nicely with the University of Texas Tower there in the background.
Horns.
But absolutely. But see, here's the key. What people don't know about your background that hopefully we'll link to and tie to is the fact that you've been there, done that at various stages of innovation. In fact, you've got a book here that I want to shamelessly promote, Naturally Caffeinated. If you have an opportunity to pick it up, I recommend it. It's a quick read. It's easy. And that's what entrepreneurs are looking for, which is give me the information fast and then I can build on it. So with that, Steve, we've got some of your websites we can bring into this. Thank you for spending your time helping people fix this situation in their life, no matter what tier that they're on. And so with that, welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you for the hat, by the way.
Thank you, Joseph. Appreciate it, by the way. This hat is a celebration, just to start with, of UT Dallas's 50th anniversary. One of the fascinating things about UT Dallas, that even though it's part of the UT system, it was launched by three entrepreneurs, the three co-founders of Texas Instruments 50 years ago. And they saw the need to invest in talent in the North Texas region and really put skin in the game, as you talk about. And so they started the university on land of their own and then gifted that land in sort of a masterful donation of philanthropic proportions to the University of Texas, which has built the system since then. So UT Dallas has been a pleasure to be at. I do enjoy, as you mentioned, the sort of unique position of being what I sometimes tell people is by 35. I live in Austin and Dallas about half the time each. And as you know, we've gotten to know each other through my presence in the Austin ecosystem as a startup founder and investor for many years, in and out of some of the circles that you're in as well. And then in Dallas for the past little over 3 years now, as either the head of the innovation and entrepreneurship academic programs, or more recently as a senior advisor to the VP of research for the Office of Research at UT Dallas. That's where I am now, and I advise the VPR, as he's referred to, the VP of Research, Joseph Pancrazio, in the areas of innovation, commercialization, and entrepreneurship. So that's kind of my day job in Dallas, and then my day job back here is to cause trouble in Austin like you.
Got it.
So
Very good.
yeah,
I'm going to take the hat off for a second to reach
same.
over for the book.
hmm
This book, Naturally Caffeinated, The Digest.
hmm
What's the easiest way for people to get their hands on it?
The easiest way to get the hands on it is to sort of go to this handy dandy link right here.
All
Um,
right, I'm gonna
bit,
type this in while you're doing it.
okay,
Three
bit.ly/NC the book.
NC the book.
All
Naturally Caffeinated,
lowercase,
the book.
all
Well done.
lowercase. Did you get there?
I got it. I
All
think
right.
so.
You landed on a little WordPress website, and actually, one thing that not a lot of folks know is that the book, as you mentioned, is available for download for free off of that page. So if
wonderful.
they want to download a PDF version of the book, they can do that on that page and be able to sort of take it. And we can send a hard copy version of the book if they're interested in that. It's $10. We send it to you in the first class mail, and we give all the money away. We basically give it to high school entrepreneurship programs like TEDx Youth in Austin and things like that.
Fabulous. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's really one of the things I want to get into, which is not just this book as emblematic of resources, but the different programs that are out there for folks. And we'll get to that in just a second. But first of all, let me give a shout out, though, to Dallas, because the Kopsers are not just Austin people, but we are also Dallas people. My daughter lives there in Turtle Creek, working at PWC from home with our grand puppy, Charlie. So if she's watching this live or at a later date, shout out to Keaton. But let's talk about this ecosystem that is Dallas, between what's been going on there, the Dallas Entrepreneurial Center, SMU does a lot of great stuff. Bunker Labs just opened in Dallas this last year. Capital Factory is now expanding there. University of Texas, Macomb School of Business opened up a campus. Let people know what's going on in Dallas and the North Texas region.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of activity going on in Dallas. It's been just really fascinating for me, and very rewarding to be part of the Dallas ecosystem on the ground the past 3 years. Like any other Texan, and there's many of us, you being one of them. When you're in Texas, you learn pretty quickly that you do business in all of Texas. You're doing business in Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and of course Dallas, Fort Worth. And so, you can tend to find yourself in some of these other large sister cities throughout your professional career, but you really do get a different look at it when you're on the ground and live and are part of the ecosystem. And so it's been really rewarding for me to live in Dallas the past 3 years and get to know people and build relationships on the ground. And indeed, Dallas is a fascinating area. Just like the other cities, it's different in terms of the way it's architected and the resources that it has, but it has an incredibly robust ecosystem throughout the larger region that is there to be able to support startups. When you talk about the startup world in Austin, for example, it's so concentrated and kind of meshing.
By geography, quite literally.
Literally geography, and as you know, sort of some could almost identify ground zero of startups in Austin as 6th and Congress, right? Like that's right there. There are probably 14 to 17 different cities in the larger Dallas-Fort Worth community that are 150,000 people or more in size. That's like 14 to 17 Amarillos.
Yeah, I just got to pause you on that statistic because people don't really understand North Texas and its size.
Right.
So for people who think of it as Dallas or Fort Worth, they're missing all the other communities like Arlington, Irvine, all the other places. But just to remind everybody, what did you say in terms of how many big cities there are in the North Texas region?
Yeah, there's somewhere on the range of 14 to 17 communities of 150,000 people or more in those communities.
So everything's bigger in Texas, even our big cities.
Even the North Texas region. And so, and one that I'll just highlight in particular is Frisco. And, people hear Frisco and they think Bay Area or a steakhouse. Well, Frisco, Texas is a phenomenon. And if you haven't been there, in the Dallas-Fort Worth region recently, you need to go there because there'll probably be things that are pulling you there. Frisco, indeed, in the next decade, could be the third leg of the stool of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It's that incredible a growth phenomenon.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's amazing the stuff going on there.
And I believe George Strait also had a little shout out for Frisco in one of his songs.
Yeah, indeed.
So let me let me pull up this screen here.
Please.
We're already 10 minutes into this, and I don't
Yeah.
want to miss the opportunity to talk about some of the stuff that you're associated with, because you have a couple different hats.
Yeah.
So with this first one, this is innovation entrepreneurship at UT Dallas. What do you want to highlight here?
Yeah, for sure. Well, a couple things actually. So I know you had my good friend and colleague Mitch Jacobson on a program not too long ago. Mitch, sometimes I kind of have fun referring to myself when people want to know what I do in Dallas. As I say, I'm the Mitch Jacobson of Dallas, because in many respects, Mitch and I have a common set of resources that we operate within our university ecosystem. Mitch obviously runs the flagship program at University of Texas Austin flagship. And I have a similar set of resources that this particular website, innovation.utdallas.edu, is featuring. And that is, we have a nationally ranked academic program, both at the undergraduate and graduate levels. If you take both of those programs, we're among the top 10 programs in the nation of academic entrepreneurship programs that you'll find. And that's competing against public and private schools. So the very best, Stanford, Harvard, Dartmouth, on and on. We're in the top 10 in terms of undergrad and grad programs combined. So from the academic program, then we have a co-working and accelerator program. We're one of the 3 Blackstone launch pads in Texas. The other 2 are at UT Austin, and then Texas A&M College Station, the Texas A&M flagship school. And a Blackstone launch pad is a $1 million investment by the Blackstone Charitable Foundation, which is the charitable arm of Blackstone Group, the world's largest private equity firm. And so we have one of the 3 of those in Texas. We have a incubator program, in some ways kind of similar to the Austin Technology Incubator, although it's clearly the granddaddy of all incubator programs in Texas and really the nation. But our program is called the Venture Development Center. We have 26 companies operating there that have taken in venture financing, developing products.
And those companies are mostly startup in size, or they range in spectrum?
That's a great question. The majority of the Venture Development Center is there to be able to take typically research-based companies, so companies spinning out of a biology lab or a chemistry lab with some kind of invention that can form the fundamental elements of a product, and then be able to sort of take it to a safe harbor spot that's still on campus, and yet so it's close by to where the university researcher works, but also is off campus in a way that they can sort of conduct business as a initial early startup, and bring investors in and be able to hold events and bring mentors in and do the kinds of things that you would do in a dedicated co-working environment at say Common Desk or Capital Factory or one of those locations.
Yeah, so we'll get into how you're collaborating with other groups, but we're past the halfway point here. So tell us a little bit about the Office of Research and then how that plays in.
You bet. So the Office of Research, that's a lot of people don't understand about universities and the way they work is, you think of a university as really like a Berkshire Hathaway. It's a giant holding company, and then the individual colleges in the university are like wholly owned subsidiaries of that holding company. And the deans,
and sometimes the deans act like that too, but that's for another subject, another day.
They do indeed. And so the Office of Research in Tier 1 research universities like ours is kind of like one of those major shared services organizations, your R&D group, your technology invention group, things like that. And that's what our Office of Research is. So it really is the group that sort of sponsors and really helps to produce and work with our inventors, our researchers in their various labs, to bring forth and translate technology from the lab into a commercial use of some kind. That's what we do. And along the way, we offer various services that you need. We help to identify and then document the intellectual property that's created in the lab so that that IP can be available to be licensed out by companies that are interested in maybe using that technology. We have, the innovation services that I just mentioned to you a little while ago that are, helping to mentor and provide funding to startups as well. So Office of Research is the sort of the funder of all those activities behind the innovation activity. That's what they do.
So my question now kind of takes everything you've described, what you have been doing, and
Mhm.
let's talk about it now in this era of COVID.
Yes.
People are looking for what the opportunities are. How do they adapt?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you seeing? And what
Yeah.
are you recommending that might
Yeah.
be helpful to folks?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I really appreciate that. Because of so I'll just identify a couple things that UT Dallas has done, and then resources that we have to offer. First and foremost, the websites that you were showing, the innovation.utdallas.edu and then the research.edu, those both have um, general link pages to small business resources
Yeah.
or other sort of
I'm going to
scholarship
drop
and
those
grant
down into the
opportunities.
chat. So I'm still listening, but I'm
Yeah,
just
good.
going online here.
Yeah, please do. So those are just yet another resource that people can go and search for to be able to find handy links. And while some of the links might be repeated in other locations, there might be a few unique ones that small business people or other organizations haven't seen yet that might be helpful. The University of Texas, Dallas itself is like any other sizable campus operation in that we have thousands of employees and 30,000 students that go there. And so we have a pretty large set of resources to pull from. So, for example, we've donated thousands of articles of personal protective equipment, PPE, to um, our sort of our primary care facilities in the
And
Dallas
is
area.
this on hand equipment or is this
Yeah,
being produced?
on-hand equipment. So we've done both. So on the on-hand equipment, in our labs, both in our natural sciences area and our biology and chemistry areas, we've had a lot of equipment that now that we can no longer continue our research because of the shelter-in-place orders, we're able to sort of divert that to necessary and needed areas like the primary care hospitals at UT
Sure.
Southwestern and Parkland, and even Richardson, which is the city where UT Dallas physically resides. So we've donated those pieces of PPE, and then we've begun to manufacture them. So two noteworthy manufacturing activities that are actually both products of startups that came out of our innovation programs that I was talking about earlier. So the first one is one where we've taken a makerspace that we have at UT Dallas, a 20,000 square foot
And if
makerspace.
you mention the names, I'll go online and see if I can find them
Yeah.
while you're talking.
You bet. The first one is a program that's being sort of underwritten by our engineering school. And the startup they're working with is a company called Adaptive 3D. And what Adaptive is doing is they're using materials and technology that they have to create essentially it's a PEEP valve that is the critical piece of equipment needed for ventilators. And so they're manufacturing once they get to capacity, hopefully hundreds of those per day that are an essential piece of being able to make ventilators work properly. So they're turning a maker lab that we have into a manufacturing facility
Is
at
this
UT
the group
Dallas.
right here?
Yeah, those are the guys. Yeah, run by
Okay,
a gentleman
so
named Walter Voigt. So
I'm
they've
going to
done the
drop
work, and
them down here too.
that's right. And then the other group that just has been working is just a clever young man that came through the computer science department of UT Dallas, formed a company called Invene. And he's been in the media recently. His name is James Griffin. And he, working with an anesthesiologist that started another startup at UT Dallas, had put together a very simple but clever converter to scuba masks. And
Oh, I think I heard about this one.
yeah, and so he's 3D printed those converters, and you can take a sort of a scuba mask and applying that converter, immediately change that into a industrial strength kind of N95 quality mask to be able to use in healthcare settings. So that's James Griffin and Peter
Yeah,
Beck.
I found it right here.
Yeah, that's it. From Invene and from Vigilant Labels. Again, two of our startups that came out of the innovation ecosystem at UT Dallas. So that's a couple of examples where our startups and our university are collaborating to pull university resources into something that creates value for the healthcare sort of emergency health system that's addressing the needs of our communities. From a resources perspective on startups and kind of what they need there, really UT Dallas is like the other UT institutions. We are a part of the state of Texas. So we're one of the 14 UT institutions across the state. And while our primary mission is to help to educate the next generation's workforce, and then also to sort of create new inventions through the research we do, we have an obligation to serve the citizens of Texas. And so our obligation specifically is, kind of to the North Texas region. And we are a resource to, small businesses of any kind, individual entrepreneurs that want to call upon us. They're welcome to call. And I'm an easy guy to reach because, as you know, my name's Steve G. They can reach me at steveg@utdallas.edu.
Yep.
So I'm happy to take the calls from folks, especially in that, really trying to struggle to make it category and see this pandemic through, what kinds of resources we can assist them with.
Yeah. So the question I said earlier that we would come back to here at the end is that idea of collaboration with all the different universities, organizations, for-profit, nonprofit that are there in the North Texas region.
Yeah.
What else should the viewers know about it? And most importantly, if they want to get involved, let me turn off that. If they want to get involved, how can they get involved? You gave your email.
Sure.
But beyond that, if they're thinking of donating their time, their treasure, their talent inside this ecosystem, Capital Factory, the Dallas Entrepreneur Center, what are the other places you recommend they get involved?
Right. Okay. A few resources that I would call out right off the bat. First, a shout out to our friends at the Dallas Entrepreneur Center, the DEC as it's known. And I think you can find them at dec.co. Bill Chin and the leadership there are doing a tremendous job of making sort of resources available to the Dallas community. So I would urge people to look up the DEC, DEC, and I think .co. Another great resource for the Dallas community writ large, especially in the technology startup world, is something put together by a collaboration between the Dallas Chamber of Commerce and Dallas Innovates. And that is referred to, if you can find that resource at guide.dallasinnovates.com.
Okay.
And that's a tremendous resource that people can go and see all the various organizations, meetings, groups, co-working spaces, et cetera, funders, investors. That's available to guide.dallasinnovates.com.
Guide.dallas.innovates?
Dallas Innovates is one word, guide.dallasinnovates.com.
Okay.
So that's another terrific resource. And I do want to also, you asked about universities. Yeah, that's a terrific resource right there. Universities, UT Dallas and SMU collaborated on a challenge to university students, like what can students themselves do in this time of need. So we issued a challenge last week to university students in collaboration with a group called RevTech. They're a retail accelerator led by a gentleman named David Matthews out of Dallas. And so we're going to be making $5,000 challenge grants. RevTech, if you look up RevTech, REVTCH, UTD, and SMU, you'll probably find
RevTech Ventures.
It's RevTech Ventures. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So RevTech Ventures. They're matching grants from UT Dallas and from SMU to students that come up with solutions for what we're kind of viewing as this next era of safe normal. We're in this period right now where it's unsafe, right, Joseph? I mean,
right.
We're all asked to sort of stay home, flatten the curve, get to a point where we can start implementing solutions to get back to some kind of new safe normal that will carry us forward to the time of a cure and or vaccine. And so, we want to be able to sort of tap into the richness and robustness of interaction in a first-person form on these magnificent campus environments that we have, but we have to do it safely. And so we've basically said to students, come up with different interesting ways to be able to provide protection, social distancing, other kinds of mitigation or suppression of sort of virus risks, but still be able to somehow engage with your fellow students in kind of proximity somehow. So we're giving out small sort of seed grants of $5,000, SMU, UT Dallas is with RevTech, and hopefully university students will respond to that.
Yeah, no, well, that's what, Mitch, like to your point, Mitch Jacobson, who interviewed earlier, talked about that, which is that in times of great peril, there are moments that provide the catalyst for this innovation. And then, in fact, somebody that was listening in even chimed in with that same phrase, in which I use it as a very shameless promotion for my book, Catalyst, Leadership and Strategy, which is where, I try to capture all these ideas. So we're tying it up at the end here, Steve. Anything I didn't ask you that you want to share with the audience before we tune off? turn
No,
on.
you didn't. But I do want to ask you a question, Joe, and
Yeah.
that is, I've always wondered, in the copy of the book that you signed for me,
Yes.
you have in there as your sort of imprimatur, people will be what they can see. And I've always
Oh,
wanted to ask you what you mean by that.
so people will be what they can see. In
Yeah.
fact, I am so glad you brought this up because I'm getting ready to launch on LinkedIn today, just finished editing it, a slide deck that walks through the 7 elements of what I mean by people will be what they can see. At the end of the day, we are all role models at every level. You are already exhibiting the leadership you want to see, whether it's positive or negative. But most importantly, if you want to enact change, 2 things are involved. Number one, you have to be the change you want to see. You can't just mail it in. You can't just say, you guys should take the hill. I'll be back here. You all should stay late and make this company work. I'll be at home. You can't do it. So people will be what they can see. You have to be the change you want to see. But inside of that also is this notion that people will look to you as a role model for what they can be, meaning that if they want to grow up and be a senior advisor to the Office of Research, if they want to grow up to be the scientist that cures COVID or cures cancer, if they want to be that person, there have got to be people that they see, that they identify with. And
Mm-hmm.
part of what I challenge in the mentorship work that I do is to go out and seek people who are not you, who do not look like you, and make sure they get to where they're going to go, to turn back, pull those people and pay it forward. Because otherwise, we're not going to have the richness and the contribution of everyone. I mean, it is a sad fact that in this United States of America, in the year 2020, among the board of all of the Fortune 500 companies at the CEO helm, there are more men named John than there are women CEOs in the top 5 Fortune 500. And so people will be what they can see. It's got all kinds of meaning packed
Yeah.
inside of it. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I've been
Can't wait to see that.
years. Yeah. Yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, when I launch it on Pinterest, that's where we're going to throw that little board out this afternoon. I'll make sure that you're tagged in it somehow so that you can see it. But it's been a passion of mine for years. It's all over my new website. And that's really the obligation. And you, sir, and what
Yeah.
you're doing, I'll just end by putting this hat back on. People will be what they can see and realize that University of Texas at Dallas, co-founded by the 3 entrepreneurs that co-founded Texas Instruments. Did I get that right?
That's right.
And that they wanted there to be more entrepreneurs and they wanted to be more engineers, more innovators. So they set the conditions, and that's exactly what we talk about.
Indeed.
So,
Whoosh.
thanks for being here, part of this. I love it.
Bet. Thank you, Joseph.
Take care. Thanks a lot.
Take care. All right. You bet.
So I appreciate you tuning in for another discussion with another subject matter expert, thought leader, innovator, people who are on the cutting edge of figuring out not just what society was like under normal circumstances, but as Steve G just pointed out, the new safe normal and what that looks like. The whole purpose of these talks, if you get anything out of them, is fantastic because that's how I learn, listening from other smart people, whether it's reading biographies, listening to podcasts, or seeking out others for advice during this time. And when I'm sheltered in and not able to get out, I'm going to continue to push these interviews out as often as I can. If you have a topic you would like to see discussed, if you have a person you would like to see interviewed, reach out to me on LinkedIn, which is where this interview is going to go next. As well as reach out on YouTube or on Facebook. And at the end of the day, whether it's from my nonprofit, US Tomorrow, that's focused on the workforce, or my work at the University of Texas McComb School of Business as an executive in residence, or whether it's my work in the private sector with Grayline, the goal is to create better community, and we do that by working together. And so I appreciate everybody tuning in. Look forward to continuing the discussion. Again, my name is Joseph Kopser. Take care and have a great day. See you later.